Okay, up next we have a panel, and the panel will be talking about our entrepreneurial journey. The panel will be moderated by Dr. Joyce Bono. She's a professor of management for Warrington College of Business. The members of the panel are Allison Adams. She is the founder of Oxford Exchange. Kim Kaupe, co-founder of ZinePak, and Ann Stokes, founder of Search.
It is a pleasure to be here with you today. One of the things that I study, in addition to what makes people happy and have fun at work, is what are the things that help women get ahead and what are the things that hold women back in leadership positions. And so this has been an ongoing one of my research streams that I work on, but I've never worked in the entrepreneurship area. So I learned from Susanna this morning that there are 10 million of you out there that I am neglecting in my research program. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of this today, and I hope to have some future in studying the things that are specific to women in entrepreneurship versus women in leadership more generally. I wanted to start, the purpose of the panel is for you to get to know the experiences that these three accomplished women have had. So I thought I would start out by a question that I'll have each of them answer so you get a little sense of their background. And to our panelists, you can take this any direction that you would like to so that we have a sense of your background. So what I want to hear about is sort of the background of how you became an entrepreneur. So you may have always thought about that. You may have been standing in your kitchen with coffee one morning and said, this is what I'm going to do next. And so what I'm really interested in is, do you remember a specific day when you knew, a week, what led you to this position of, I'm going to go this entrepreneurial direction? And in any order that you wish to answer this.
Well, I'll go ahead and start because I never had any intention of being an entrepreneur. I always just wanted to be an archaeologist. And that's what I am. I came to University of Florida in 1983, and Leah and I were laughing on the way in here because we both came in this room and said, oh my gosh, this is kind of where we started our careers. I sat in that, like the fifth row back, my first day at UF for the orientation, and it's so much fun to be back here in this panel discussion in this group of women entrepreneurs and others, and to be talking not about archaeology, which is what I always thought I would talk about, but to talk about being a businesswoman. So I always just wanted to be an archaeologist, but the thing is, I knew that I wasn't really cut out for academia. I admire all of those of you who are, but I knew I wasn't going to be a great teacher. So what I had to do was find some way that I could do archaeology every day and make a living doing it. Because when I returned from my first semester at UF home and I told my father that I was going to be an archaeologist, I was supposed to be a real doctor, which is what Kathy is, not a PhD. And my dad started laughing and I said, what's so funny? I'm serious. He said, I know you're serious, but what worries me is I'm going to spend the rest of my life supporting you. And so I proved to him that wasn't the case. So what I did was when I got into grad school, I realized I had to find a way to make a living, and I started this company called Search. Well, Southeastern Archaeological Research, but we shortened it up to Search. And we did small projects at first, and then we finally got this large contract through the Department of Transportation. We applied for it, we beat out all the other companies in our second year, and we were awarded this contract, and this is kind of my journey I'm telling you, so you'll see it's kind of the unorthodox way to get into entrepreneurship. I had a partner at the time, we each owned 50% of the company, and he told me about a week after we'd been awarded this 5-year, $1 million contract that he was leaving. And he was gonna go take a position at the University of Alabama, Moundville. So here I was with this company that we had a few small contracts and now this very large multi-year contract, and I was on my own because he was leaving. And I said, what do I do? And he said, well, just give the contract back. They'll give it to the next person in line. And I thought, wow, so you know, I have a little more faith in myself than that. So he left, he went off to Moundville. Of course, he wouldn't give his stock back to me or sell it back to me yet, even though it really wasn't worth much. So I had to figure out how to make search work without the help of a partner. And so that's kind of my transition into entrepreneurship.
It was hit you in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Anne. Kim?
Thank you. Yeah, I worked at a corporate job, so it wasn't like I was one of those people who are like, oh, at 12 years old, I was selling candy out of the bus, and I was an entrepreneur from a young age. I worked at a corporate job, and I think the moment that entrepreneurship really hit me, my co-founder had kind of said, I have this idea, I think you'd be a great partner, we should execute it. But it's scary to leave a corporate job, and it was 2011, it was still the height of the recession, you know, I had a paycheck and a 401k, but I was working for these two guys who owned a small ad agency, and it was very much one of those, all the men had the idea, and then the women like executed it. It was like a Mad Men sort of setup in this ad agency, and we were sitting in a conference room, and they had this great idea, and they wanted me to present it to the client. It just so happened that Johnson & Johnson was our client, and it was a feminine care product, and the idea was very bad, and I told them that, and I was like, I feel validated in saying that, because you don't have feminine care needs, and I do. And they insisted that I presented, and it just kind of hit me like, if these two dum-dums can start an ad agency and come up with these dumb ideas, like how hard could it possibly be for Brittany and I to do it? So really it's not like one of those, oh, since the age of 12, it kind of entrepreneurship kind of hit me out of a hate for the place I was at.
Or realizing of what you had to offer.
Exactly.
Thank you, Kim. Allison, what was your moment?
I don't really have a moment either. I knew I always wanted to be in our family business, so I worked in our family business. We are McDonald's franchisees in Tampa, in the surrounding area, and so I did that for 20 years. And my brother, who were partners, had this crazy idea to buy a building, and so that we could have an office away from our office, and it turned into my permanent office. And so I guess it was really my brother pushing me in to do something else, and that was my entrepreneur journey. That's how it started, really. But it's been a lot of fun. We opened another restaurant, a retail shop, a bookstore. It has a shared working space. It's 24,000 square feet, and knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing about retail, nothing about bookstores. We were the people opening a bookstore when bookstores are failing everywhere else in the United States. And so most people told me it was a really bad idea. And it turned out to be a wonderful idea. And people in Tampa spent a lot of time there, and we've accomplished what we wanted. And we're very proud of it.
Thank you. So I better stay by the microphone. I thought the place to go after knowing how you got started is then how you almost got stopped. So I wonder if each of you could, and later I'll throw out some questions you don't have to all answer, but I thought this one was important to hear from all of you. Can you think about what was your biggest surprise, a shock, a barrier, an obstacle, the time when you had to kind of rethink that decision because you were running up into an obstacle, and then talk a little bit about how you addressed it and overcame it?
That's a good question. A really good question, by the way. I think for me, the obstacles are really every day, and sometimes I'm my own worst obstacle. You know, the mental grind of entrepreneurship, it's not, fun and roses, it's not Shark Tank where you walk in and people throw money at you and you're like, yay, and then you leave and you have this big successful company. Every day, sometimes getting out of bed can be hard, and there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with it. Not only do people have doubts about you, but everybody has insecurities. Sometimes you get doubts about yourself, and there just has to be a little voice inside of you that says, no, I am good enough. I am going to do this. I am going to land this deal. I am going to work with XYZ. And sometimes it's hard for that voice to get heard, among all the other external and sometimes internal voices. But I think sometimes the biggest obstacle can be yourself. And I find that a lot of other entrepreneurs are somewhat perfectionists. So again, sometimes your biggest obstacle is getting past your own, the store design is good enough, it can open. It's not one more week of tweaking. It's, just being okay with moving forward.
Well, for me, it's those times in the business when I knew we needed to diversify in some way, because that's really been the key to our success, is that we haven't tried to stay in one market. We provide all the services that our clients need: archaeology, maritime archaeology, history and archives, architectural history, and museum design. So it was when I knew that I needed to expand into something else that was the most difficult. At one point we lost a contract because they wanted to see a service in-house, history in-house. So I said, you know what? We're gonna have to invest the capital to start a history division. And then the big one was investing in a maritime division, all the equipment that comes with that, and knowing the boats, the sonar, the insurance. So I think that was so I've had stages that were very difficult. And then, of course, opening in new markets. When we decided to go out to Hawaii and we're going to work in the Pacific, we're all pretty much Florida archaeologists. We started off that way. A lot of us have our degrees from here. But it's that risk-taking and knowing that you really need to do it. And I encourage you who are starting your businesses, you're going to hit those points where you just have to take that leap of faith and take the risk and know that it's going to pay off.
I would say, kind of on the same thing, just getting over that fear of failure. You're gonna I made a million mistakes. I have a long list of them. But once you kind of get over that fact, okay, I can make a mistake. I'm gonna learn something from it. It's not gonna be the end of the world, and the business is gonna survive. I mean, don't bet the whole business on something. But getting used to that and not beating yourself up and saying, I'm not good enough to do this. But you really are.
Thank you very much. I think sometimes the fear of those obstacles that you identified is what stops people from getting started in the first place. So I thought we might as well have them on the table. And that, I think, leads us to what one of the other big obstacles is. We heard from Susanna this morning that there are differences in resources and finances between men and women in entrepreneurship. And so I'd like you to talk next about money. So how did you finance your venture? Did you find that being a woman affected at all your ability to finance it, or the way you financed it? Anybody want to take that one on?
I'll take that one. Because I'm kind of the opposite of the process that Susanna mentioned this morning, the entrepreneurial process. I kind of am like an accidental entrepreneur. So I started Search. My partner and I each put in $300. And that was pretty much all I had at the time. And then we did some small projects. When we got that first DOT contract, I all of a sudden had to hire staff to be able to execute on these task orders they were giving us. And I didn't have any money. We had the little bit we had made from the small developer projects we'd done. So I went to my father, who had cut me off from financing when I started Search. Because I knew that was coming. I'd kind of been on the gravy train for a long time. I'd through my master's, and he finally said enough. So I went to him and asked him for money, and he said, nope, can't help you. He wanted me to do it on my own. He said, you can go get some financing. So then my mother, who was my bookkeeper, gave me $7,500 to make the first payroll for my first DOT job, and then DOT paid within a month, and that was the financing that allowed us to build the whole company. So I've never actually had to go get financing because I've always had clients who paid on time. But I will tell you that one thing that's very important when you're starting your business and the money starts coming in and you're really proud of yourself, don't spend it. Don't buy the BMW. don't live out of your company. You need to keep that working capital because there's going to be some time when you want to diversify in some area or there's something else you want to do that you're going to be very happy that you kept that money in the company and didn't distribute it to yourself or live, a good lifestyle out of the company.
That's great, Ann. Thanks. Anybody else want to talk about the dollar part of this?
I'm probably not a good example. So we did the same. We kept all the capital in our McDonald's part of the business, and so we were able to personally finance the Oxford Exchange. So I didn't have to.
So you're not a good example because you did buy the BMW, or?
Well, I didn't have to go and do the financing part. I was able to.
And Kim?
We didn't get outside financing either. One, I started the company at 25 and Brittany was 27, and I don't think anybody would have given us financing if we had the next Facebook. I wouldn't have given me money probably at that point. We were first-time entrepreneurs, no track record, but we were lucky enough. Our company is set up very much like an agency model. So if this water bottle costs $2, we sell it for $5. So we were able to grow based on, again, putting all the profit back into the business and eating Kraft macaroni and cheese and ramen noodles. It's very unsexy for the first couple of years. It's not cool. You're not going to brunch with your friends. Unlimited mimosas don't exist because that costs $20 and you don't have $20. So I think for us it was just living very much in our means, putting all the profit back into the business. But I think it's an interesting time right now. I mean, I know the stats were a little doom and gloom, but I'm New York City based, and it has become in the last 6 to 12 months very much a fad among the VCs in New York, First Mark, Union Square Ventures, et cetera, to finance women-owned businesses. There's a ton of VCs that are now, Golden Seeds is a New York-based VC that they only fund women entrepreneurs. So it's become kind of in vogue to start to dump a lot of money into women-owned companies. ClassPass, SoulCycle, Guilt, those are all women companies who have all received large amounts of financing.
And there are also good resources in the area, such as Small Business Administration has loans for small business and woman-owned small business, so you can always go use that as a resource.
So one of the things that Susanna told us was there's this gap in growth rate. So if we can just kind of build on to your stories about financing. So you both basically got kind of self or internal financing and made it go from there. Do you feel like that if you wanted to go the next step to grow it, you would need to get external financing? And maybe what I really am looking for is a comment on what you think that gap might be about. Is it that this is my lifestyle and my life and I don't need to be bigger and better because growth in revenue is not the ultimate, it's me having a business that I own and am engaged in? Or is that a big scary step to go out and get that next level of financing which would fund growth?
I would say for me, it's the big scary step. So if we were going to build another Oxford Exchange, yes, we would definitely need to have financing. Do we want to? Absolutely. But it's, we have to prove to investors who we are first. Yeah. So we're working on that. So maybe next time I come back, I can tell you about the big scary step.
Good. We'll look forward to that.
We're not there yet. So I'm not sure. It might be a little bit of both.
Yeah. Anybody else, Kim or Ann, want to comment on that?
Well, we've been approached by VC firms who wanted to help us grow. We've had a pretty steady growth rate of 20 to 30% for the past about 7 years. And like I said, we've been able to self-finance everything. The thing with taking on a VC firm or someone who was going to invest a lot in the company is that they often want some type of control. And I've owned 95% of this company for 23 years, and I'm not willing to give up control to anyone. So that to me would be the biggest obstacle, is having anyone else have any control over my baby.
Kim,
I think too it depends on how you view growth, right? There are some entrepreneurs who view growth as how fast can I get as quickly as I can? You know, you look at the Ubers of the world, the Airbnbs, it's how much money and gasoline can I pour on this fire to get these huge valuations, these huge, and yeah, if you're going that route, you absolutely need VC money. I mean, it goes without saying. Class Pass, I don't know if you guys have that here, but it's very popular in New York and LA and SF. It's basically like a gym membership that lets you go anywhere. You know, yeah, it grew from like $1 million to like $23 million in a 12-month period, but they also took $40 million in financing. So, you know, the numbers kind of tell a story on their own. If you're talking about growing your company over 20 years and owning 100% of it and building it into a $40 million business on a 20-year plan instead of a 12-month plan, you know, it might be possible to do it without VC money. But I think in terms of very short, high growth, unless you just have an amazing SaaS product or algorithm or app that just takes off, you're going to need financing. There's just no way to physically do it.
Thank you. Let's move off of money now. That's not the part of this whole business that interests me. I'm interested in the leadership and the culture and that part of it. So I wonder if you could, first, before we talk about yourself, I wonder if any of the three of you had a role model that you had as someone you looked up to as you started your own business, and somebody who you wanted to emulate in terms of their style, their approach to business. And then I'll move from there into leadership and culture. But any role models anybody would like to share with us?
Well, I never really had a business role model because church was actually my first job, unless you count the summer I spent in Hawaii serving drinks on a sailboat, which I thought that was a good idea at the time. And then I came back to grad school. So in business, I never really had a role model, but I had these two professors here at UF who were in the anthropology department, Dr. Kathy Deegan and Dr. Prue Rice. And they were these brilliant, confident, beautiful, these incredible women who, they were the top in their field, but they still were so accessible. So they took us grad students and they would, they kind of showed me how I could be in applied archaeology. I wanted to be to applied archaeology what they were to academic archaeology. They thought nothing of just, you know, getting a bunch of students and running a field school down in remote parts of Mexico or somewhere in Africa. So they showed me that there really weren't any limits to what women could do, and they just exuded this confidence, and I thought, you know what, I want to be like that. I can do that.
That's great, Ann. Thanks. How about Allison, Kim? Any role models?
Growing up, my best friend's mother was the first female judge in Hillsborough County, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And she was really, of all of my friends, a long time ago, the only working mom. And I think I always, you know, just was kind of fascinated with her and her role and who she was, and kind of the same thing, her presence. And I was a business student at UF, and considering, of course, I felt I really needed to go to graduate school, so I was going to get my MBA. And I had a professor say to me, you really don't need to get your MBA, why don't you just go to law school? And I went to law school. I mean, was that unthought out. But I think part of that reason, the reasoning was, I could be just like Judge Bucklew. And then I never practiced law. I started on fries.
But it's probably served you well in your business.
Yeah, I think you have different role models in different stages of your life, too. So
I never really had any exact role models. I think what happens now is I just get like business crushes on people. Like
I like that.
Oh my God, Jason Fried is running his business so amazing. He has a monthly column in Inc. magazine. I just like fangirl out like when I see him at conferences and I'm like, can I take a picture with you? So I think that happens more now. I just like fangirl over people than, one exact role model. Lots of different crushes.
So now maybe you as a role model. I want to hear a little bit about how your leadership style evolved, and then also, because I think this might be our last question, if you could talk about how that's affected the culture of your organization or the culture that you've tried to create. So kind of who do you feel you are as a leader? How did that evolve during your business? How does that affect the culture you're trying to create for your business?
Well, I'd say my leadership role is very collaborative, and it kind of has to be because I have about 130 staff, and most of them have masters and PhDs. So you can imagine what it's like to corral a bunch of really brilliant scientists in one direction. So what I've tried to do is just recognize each of their skill sets, because a lot of times scientists aren't the most gregarious people. So I've had to figure out what each of their skills were and put them in that position. Some archaeologists turn out to be great project managers. Others hate project managing. They just want to be an archaeologist and not be bothered with it. So I think I've had to identify each person's strengths and put them in that role. But one thing we really tried to do at Search is we've always called it a culture of excellence. So everything we do, whether it's sending an internal email, preparing a report for a client, everything, we try to do it exceedingly well, which is difficult because now we have 16 offices around the country, from Florida up to Maine, and one in Hawaii, one in Guam. So to keep this culture together is a little bit difficult. We have really good communication networks, and everyone knows that at Search we have a certain level at which you have to work, and everyone's proud to be part of that, and that allows us to keep this culture of excellence.
I'm kind of on the culture. I'm going to start with the culture thing first. To me, at Oxford Exchange, the culture is very much it's very creative. We're in like a super rapid growth. We've only been open 3 years, and from where we started to where we are now, what we thought we were going to be to what we are is completely different. So I try as a leader to encourage this culture of creativity. What's going to make us better? What is the next thing? But to encourage my staff is all very young, encourage them to become better leaders in their different departments, and learn something new. What classes can you take? We all started out when we opened in one position, and now we're all doing completely different things. I mean, my 12-year-old started our Instagram account. I mean, so it was a very collaborative, and now I have 2 people who full-time run our social media. So we've all grown together, and that has made it certainly very unique and very special.
Yeah, I would echo Allison. A lot of my leadership style has to do with learning, and not only learning within the business, kind of knowing all the different parts, but learning outside the business. If people want to take classes about photography, or people want to take classes that kind of are outside of the scope of what we do, we highly encourage it. And I think my leadership style, probably if I had to pick like one word, it would be about transparency. So we have everybody take something, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, called StrengthsFinder. It's a book, and then it's an online test. It's something like crazy, like 90 questions or something, and it tells you not only your strengths, but some of your weaknesses. So we have everybody at the company do that, and then we let everybody at the company read everybody else's answers, because I think it's important when you're communicating with an internal team, if you know that Sarah has a problem with conflict, and you kind of see her in the meeting being really quiet, you might say, Sarah, I want you to have a chance to step up. Your voice is kind of stepping back right now, and I know that that's not one of your strengths, to bring up conflict in the middle of a meeting. So I think kind of knowing what people's strengths and weaknesses are if you're going to work on a team is really helpful.
And since this is a women's entrepreneurship conference, I want to direct this question back to the notion of being women entrepreneurs. And I wonder if each of you could think of things that you feel have been like unique advantages for being female, but then perhaps on the flip side, some disadvantages as well, things that presented barriers or obstacles that were associated with being a woman.
How much time do we have?
Well, I'm going to make sure we leave 2 minutes for each of you at the end for advice, but otherwise you can take some time on this one.
Well, I haven't, of course, we all have those times when you've been discriminated against. For instance, before I started search, I thought I would just go work for someone else. So I sent out my application to the big company in Florida, and I got rejected. So I got a formal rejection letter on a Thursday. The next day, my boyfriend got a phone call from the same company offering him a job to go work on the dig I wanted to work on. And I thought, wow, that's not really fair. But then again, I also thought, it can't be that hard to do what they're doing. So that was kind of another thing that spurred me to start search. So I'm very thankful that that happened. And that's another thing. Sometimes these things that may seem like the worst thing at the time, they end up being such a blessing. So you just really need to look at them that way. But I would have to say that, I'm sorry.
Advantages or
Yeah.
disadvantages?
Yeah, okay. I was like,
So
I knew
that
I
was
going
a
somewhere with this.
disadvantage,
Okay,
and-
so that was a disadvantage. I think the advantage is that being a woman is a complete differentiator. I walk into a meeting, and most of my clients, I work mostly for the military, energy companies, so I walk in there and I'm a differentiator. They love working with women. We bring a completely different perspective. We're seen as completely honest, as collaborative. So I've always just turned it into an advantage rather than being a disadvantage. And I think that's the way most of my clients see it also.
Great. Thanks, Ann. Kim, you had something to
Yeah.
say on this topic.
No, mine's very much the same. I mean, I look the way I look. I'm young. Like, there's no getting around that. Whether you're a male or female, being young is just, it's sometimes held against you. I've been asked in meetings to speak to my boss. I've been mistaken for the assistant a few times. You know, it happens, but I think it can also be, it can be a blessing and a curse. So I've worked with some clients who say, you remind me of my daughter. Like, how can I help you? Or, oh, you remind me of my niece. Like, how can I help you? So, you know, I think sometimes people feel like, oh, I don't want to be seen as like this guy, like, oh, I'm one of his daughters. I don't care what you call me. Like, if you're going to help me and you're going to pay me, like, I'll be whatever you want. So, like, you just have to kind of milk that and say like, oh yeah, your daughter seems really fun. So about that client you said you'd introduce me to, like, can you introduce me to him? I think you have to take it all in stride as best you can, because if not, it just makes you completely batty. At least it does for me.
Thank you. Allison, how about you? Unique advantages or disadvantages of being a female entrepreneur?
I think there are a ton of advantages. I also have a unique situation because I'm partners with my brother. So if there are things I don't want to talk about, I can, just kind of easily fade into the background occasionally and let him answer all the hardball questions. But kind of what you're saying, people don't forget. I'm in a group, for example, called Young Presidents Organization. There are 180 members in the state of Florida, and actually we're having the conversation, 3 women. I call it my boys club, but they all know my name, and I couldn't name half of them. So it's an attitude on how you carry it, is what I would say.
Well, I wanted to make sure I saved enough time, and am I right? We have about 10 minutes left at this point. Yeah, I really want to spend the last 10 minutes with hearing you talk at some length, as much as you want to this audience who is, some are entrepreneurs, some are, I would like to be an entrepreneur. And so you can talk from things you have learned, but ultimately what I'm looking for is advice for this group to take with them today that you have learned along the way, and advice that you would give to young women as they're getting started. Give you a minute to think about that, because that's what we'll kind of end up with. What did you learn, and what should we know?
I'll start. I think that if I could impart like one piece of wisdom, the fact that you guys are even in this room, you're already like leaps and bounds ahead of like half the other people that want to be entrepreneurs. It's, half the battle is showing up. Like, you're here at 9 a.m. Like, kudos to you. It's on a Friday. It's amazing. And I think, utilizing resources for the women in the room, for better or for worse, we have the kind of mindset of like, we're gonna be Superman, right? Like we're gonna cook the dinner and get the kids to school and run this business and do everything, and you kind of try to do everything yourself. So I think utilizing resources like the Center for Entrepreneurship, and instead of going home and leaving here and being like, okay, I'm gonna spend 3 hours researching XYZ. Like, before you do that, go to the Center of Entrepreneurship, because they might have 16 hours worth of research that you wouldn't have wasted your time doing 3 hours, something that somebody already has done 16 hours worth of. So I think just kind of collaborating with other people and using resources, it's something that Brittany and I, when we first started, we didn't know about any entrepreneurship groups. We didn't know about any of this, and by the time we found it 8 months later, we were like, wow, all the problems that we thought we were having all by ourselves, how to start an LLC, how to get a CPA, what is QuickBooks, like all these things that we had no idea about. If we had joined one of these entrepreneur organizations, or we had gone to one of these meetups, you know, half the people there, if they don't have the same problem, they've already figured it out, so they can already give you an answer to it. So I think utilizing those resources is amazingly important. So if you can do that here while you're in school, it's going to set you up fantastically for once you leave.
And to add to that, when I started the business, I had a partner, and then he left, and then I was doing it on my own. What I found was so valuable over the last 20 years was that you don't have to do it all yourself. You need to build this team around you. I have a wonderful vice president. He's amazing. He does all the stuff I don't like to do. We're completely complementary. We have a great risk manager. We have wonderful health and safety. We put in all these little pieces of things that we really need to run it. So I think a lot of times as women, we think we have to do everything on our own, and we have to do it well, and we don't ask for help. Well, every time you meet someone, whether it's someone else who's in business or is in insurance or is in law, just get some little piece of advice from them and build this team around you so you're not doing it all yourself and you don't feel like you have to do it all yourself. Use those resources.
I think I kind of said at the beginning too, you know, don't be afraid to make a mistake, and you're gonna fail at a lot of things, but it's just gonna make you better. When I'm interviewing people, I'm saying my daughter is gonna be a freshman next year in college, but so I had a bunch of moms were talking about how important what is on your resume. I honestly, you know, glance at it, see if you graduated from college, but being personable, working really hard, there is so much to be said for that. The fact that you guys are here, absolutely, it's huge. It shows that you're taking initiative, that you know what you want to do, so you're going to go far. But I think those things are so simple and so important.
So maybe I need to say to you what I say when I'm on panels for junior academics at the Academy of Management conferences that sometimes gets me in trouble, but I think I heard all three of you say this at one point or another, is you can't have it all. So in this day and age, right, we're supposed to be women who can have it all, families and relationships and fun and jobs and travel, we can have it all, but you can manage it all. This notion that you can do this all by yourself and have it all just doesn't work. It has to be through resources. And one thing, the literature on building networks, which all three of you said this most important part of the connection. Allison, you're one of 3 women and 180 men. Women tend to form networks with other women, and that's awesome because you get support and emotional support, you get ideas, you have people who are like you, who've been through the same thing that you are. But when there's 180 men in that room with a whole lot of experience and you form your network with the 3 or 4 women in the room, you are missing out on a whole lot of expertise by not working with the group as a whole as well. So those are 2 things that come clear, is that through these networks is how you get it all without being able to do it all yourself, and that men and women need to be in those networks equally for women in order to get ahead. We have, by my estimation, just a couple minutes left. What didn't I ask you guys today that I should have? Any parting words of wisdom for this group?
Parting words of wisdom. I would have a lot of fun in college. Like, there's gonna be so much time for you to like worry about taxes and especially if you're gonna be an entrepreneur, payroll and what does my lawyer say this week and whatever. That just, I think, don't forget to have fun while you're here. You know, don't forget to have life experiences. And while it's important to like, you know, do well in school and have good grades and go to the hatchery and start your own business and all that's amazingly important, like don't forget to be 19 and like don't forget to be 20, because then you have people like us who come back, and that's why we fawn all over you guys being like, I remember when I was here, it was so fun. And you know, so don't forget to like make those memories, because your 4 years here will go by in a blink of an eye.
Anything else? And I would add to that, again, building on that, have fun in your business too. That if you stop having fun, you've got this business that's making money, it's paying the mortgage, but it should be about going to work every day and having fun too. Okay, I'd like you to join me in a round of applause for Allison, Kim, and Ann for sharing all their wisdom with us today. We really appreciate it. And I think I'm turning it back over to Susanna. Somebody?